Good evening, everyone. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the reading by the 10 winners of the Whiting Awards, which have been given for almost 40 years to exceptional writers in early career. I'm Courtney Hodel, Whiting's Director of Literary Programs, and I'm here to welcome our MC for tonight, who is herself a 2017 Whiting winner, the novelist Jen Beagin, whose method is to make you laugh so extremely that your heart cracks open. Every 5 years, it seems like there is a rediscovery of Laurie Colwin's very great, bittersweet comic novels of the 80s, with readers wailing that we will never see her like again. Well, here she is. It's Jen Beagin, only she's 1,000 times filthier. She's our premier chronicler of inconvenient love. Her just published and much praised novel, Big Swiss, available at this beautiful bookstore, has just been published. And it has a cast that includes 40,000 honeybees living in a kitchen ceiling, a therapist named Ohm, a rogue transcriptionist, a bunch of frisky bohemians living in a highly recognizable Hudson, New York, and two miniature donkeys. Across her three novels, her characters are always teetering on choosing oblivion. But life, unruly life, keeps calling them back. Read Big Swiss now and get ahead of the HBO series, which has Jodie Comer of Killing Eve cast in the lead. Jen Beagin.
Hi. Hello, winners. I'm just gonna, hang on, let me get situated. Can you hear me okay? Maybe put this up a little? No. Yeah? Okay. Let me open up my notes app where I wrote a couple of notes here. Okay, so before I introduce you, I just want to tell you a little about my own experience of winning this award. Hope that's cool. I'll try to be quick and coherent and not too horny or corny. I won this award when I was 46, totally broke. And to be honest, things were a little dicey for me emotionally at the time. I just moved to a new town, 2 hours north of here, and Hudson. I was living with my best friend in a very old, very cold farmhouse full of 40,000 honeybees, as Courtney said. And I was working 2 nights a week as a bartender. A couple years before, I gotten someone to publish Pretend I'm Dead, my first novel, a rather slim volume that took over 5 years to write. At one point, I'd gotten the protagonist's name tattooed on my stomach just so I'd be forced to finish it. Her name is Mona, by the way, and I told myself if I never finished the novel, I'd simply change it to Monastery and then spend the rest of my life in one. Anyway, the editor of a university press had agreed to publish Pretend I'm Dead, and he just so happens to be sitting here in this audience. Mike Levine. Mike, do you remember how much my advance was? Okay. $500. 5 years, $500. I remember reviewing the contract and being like, yeah, aren't there a couple of zeros missing from this thing? Can I get at least one more zero? No. Anyway, I didn't have an agent, so I signed the contract immediately and spent the $500 on a pair of boots that I never wore because they weren't really me. If you're curious, the boots were knee-high. They had about 100 buckles and looked stolen from the set of Hellraiser. Anyway, the book came out and sold a few copies, but my life didn't change much, so I began writing pretty much the same book again, as one does, hoping for a different result. And I had about 50 pages when I got that phone call. You know the one. It was the middle of January. It was some random time, like 3:13 p.m. And I was in bed because I was freezing, because I was living in a house with no heat. And suddenly there were these voices coming out of my phone, these beautiful voices, telling me, yes, yes, you were right. A couple of zeros had been missing. We're giving you $50,000. I quit my job immediately. I did not buy boots, but rather a ring engraved with the word yes, which I'm wearing right now. Because for the first time in a while, I wanted to live. So I invited over 30 people to the Whiting Awards as if it were a private wedding. As if I were marrying myself, which I suppose I kind of was. This isn't to say that money's everything or that money writes the book for you. It doesn't. However, I lived on the money for 2 years in the same uninsulated house. The real money, the real gift, were the voices in my ear telling me I deserve this, and it remains one of the most thrilling moments of my life. So congratulations, you all. You deserve every bit of this, and we're very excited to hear you read. How are you guys doing? You nervous? You okay? You seem fine. So I will proceed. You're about to hear 10 writers who just yesterday were announced as the winners of the 2023 Whiting Awards, selected by an anonymous jury of experts from a field of 100 writers, nominated by leaders in the literary community. Each has received a prize of $50,000. Since there are 10, I'm going to introduce them in 3 groups. This is group 1. Tommy Blount. Grew up in Detroit, Michigan. He's the author of the poetry collection Fantasia for the Man in Blue, a 2020 National Book Award finalist. Blount has been awarded scholarships and fellowships from the Breadloaf Writers Conference, Cave Canem, and Kriege Arts. Mia Chung. Mia Chung's plays include Catch as Catch Can, Ball in the Air, and You for Me for You. She has had productions at Playwrights Horizons, Page 73, NAATCO Public Theater, Royal Court Theater, Woolly Mammoth Theater, National Theater Company of Korea, and others. She's an alum of Ma Yi Writers Lab and New Dramatists. Ama Kojo. Ama is the author of Bluest Nude, finalist for a 2023 NAACP Image Award. Kojo's poems have appeared in the Best American Poetry Series, and she has received a Rona Jaffe Writers Award, a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, and a Jerome Hill Artist Fellowship, among others. Okay, so they're going to read for you, and then I'll be back.
Stop it. I only have 5 minutes. I want to sing that Kate Bush song. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so the poems I'm going to be reading, their titles and the epigraph that opens them comes from a mail order catalog from the early 20th century called Catalog of Official Robes and Banners, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Grand Dragon. You must be ready to dirty the whites of your eyes bloodshot for the sake of a clean vision. Illuminate what dare darkens your hood. Throw your capes back and bare your arms. Show them the way even night can't dim what the Lord has made you. You are the lords of fire. Sire your bloodlines. Draw blood and hold the line. stand by. Point your finger in any direction and call the land yours. Call it a house of spooks in need of a haunting. You are boogeymen. Make them dance. Watch them levitate. See them tap dance the air, light their flight back home with the warm breath of your serenade. Bandmaster. Made of satin, trimmed in silk soutage braid and embroidered in silk, silk and tassels, price each $25. All golden as a tenor rising to meet the night, a nocturne to master the screeching beasts. A song is a voice's attempt to chase down the outlaws of beauty, to capture then bound them in cords. With a fiery voice, a man could raise then rebuild the architecture of a place. In a revival tent, tarp would become temple. In a field, a man in gilded vestments could become a guiltless man of the cloth, who sees through the dark by the light of his cross. The Lord reigneth, he might croon to soothe himself from the weeping. Yes, caught up in the rapture, it's easy to forget the weeping, which is another form of song, yet unweighted by the need for melody nor harmony. Just sound pure enough to take one down to their knees, a dark keening surrounded in a white halo of hymns. This is the last poem. Thank you. Oh, did I say that? Thank you. I mean, to say the least, thank you. And thank you all for being here. Robe and helmet bag. Made of waterproof rubberoid material. That was a tongue twister. Separate compartments for robe and helmet. Price, each $1. So many of you search unguardedly inside me to remove what's needed in order to put everything back. Sweaty as surgeons, I see your faces as you open me up. Once you've returned with every finger unclasped from the fist of your bright-winged savior. Let me lord over skirted justices, this mucked land's cloaked custodians, your ironed wrinkles, your blued whites. All your bleached flags, I'll surrender to no one, no foreign element. That which left unchecked would leave a colored mess bleeding over all that labor, all those wifely fingers, the seams through which they leave and enter, marrying one white yard to another white yard. Over every darkened threshold, carry me with you, purity's patrolman. Lift me up with your clean hands. Clasp me close with this fastener's badge. Of your nation's fabric, I promise to protect and serve. Thank you.
They call themselves poets, but I think what I've heard from one of my favorite poets is that they're really rock stars. Okay. I'm a playwright, and I've assembled a few monologues to share. Now, ordinarily, you'd have the pleasure of having an actor read my stuff, but tonight you're stuck with me. Each of these is from a different play. Some are very much still in progress, and some are published work. And this is a play called Quietus. I've been feeling lately a queasy feeling when I'm alone, a sort of suffocation, a sort of butterflies feeling, but all the butterflies are in my head, sort of like the feeling of being underwater. And my skin seems to be getting tighter and tighter. My body is folded over and I am hugging myself. Or maybe it's that I'm getting bigger and bigger and pressing up against my skin. Is it my skin? Or is it the walls of the room that I'm in, which feel like skin? And like Alice, I don't fit anymore. I'm growing bigger than the room, the house. My head crashes through a wall. My arm is popping out of the roof. My legs push through a window. I sit up and the house is in pieces, hanging off me, pinching me here or there, shingles and bricks and window panes. It's uncomfortable. It's incomprehensible. And most of all, I can't go back. I can't shrink back down to fit into that space that used to be enough space, that used to be all I ever needed. I can't go back as much as I absolutely would if I could. I want to fold up and push all the pieces into place, or at a minimum, out of sight. I want to be neat and clean and unproblematic. I want to crawl back into that skin, that house, that womb. I never want to leave again, but I can't. This is from an untitled play about measurement. Ed Kim, a Korean-American college senior, talks to a few friends, fellow students at MIT, at his fraternity house. It's bad luck that Margulies catches on there's been copying. It's bad luck that then Pete and I get called in. But then what Pete Isaki should have done is tell Margulies I had done the problem set and he was copying. He should have made it clear that he was the cheat, not me. Instead, he just sits there as if he speak no English. Instead, he keeps looking at me like I'm supposed to do something. Makes it look like it was all my idea. He's practically crying, about to throw up, I swear. And then later, Isaki says to my fucking face, well, you shouldn't have let me copy you. I'm like, fuck me. Margulies gives us a slap on the wrist, that's all. But that's not the point. The point is, Pete Isaki said to me, well, you shouldn't have let me copy you. Who the fuck says that? So, okay, he's a pussy. Fine. That's fine with me. It's marginally acceptable to be a pussy, but only if you admit, okay, I'm a fucking pussy. But then you better start sucking my dick hard. Instead, it's this, you shouldn't have let me copy bullshit. How does he look himself in the mirror? He's a lying, squirrely cheat who can't be trusted. I'm not living with that fuck. No way. What are you gonna do when he cheats you on the rent and then says, you shouldn't have let me move in with you? Pussy. You really want to live with someone like that? Fuck me. And then I'm the one that's got to apologize to the professor just so we can get out of his fucking office. It was so wrong. He's a shitbag. A gutless shitbag who's gonna go far in this world. Fucking loser butthole cheat. This is a monologue that was, for a brief span of time, in my play Catch as Catch Can, and has been excised. So this is its only life when I can do readings like this. So it's in working class New England. Teresa Phelan is an Irish-American woman in her 60s. And I should note that she's performed by a male actor probably in his 40s or 50s. It was a lark. It didn't change my world, but it was a helpful moment of reflection. Father Bill's been away at a conference, and I needed someone to talk to about Tim and his engagement. Someone with some objectivity who didn't know me or Tim. So see, Father Bill wouldn't have been the right person anyways. But also objectivity on the spiritual side as well. Glarisha just seemed more neutral, you know? After all, Tim and Minjung don't practice, at least not in California. Tim said something about Sufi chanting, but anyways. Glarisha's all about the stars and the tilt of the Earth's axis and fire signs and water and earth and air. And did Roberta tell you there was a deal for new clients? So it really didn't cost that much, in case you were wondering. Just a lark. It was fun just making the appointment. And then the anticipation felt like Christmas Eve or sending out party invitations or Dad and I shopping for our first camping trip, buying the tent, selecting an outdoor stove, learning to freeze if you're suddenly face to face with a bear. The actual event, the camping trip, the birthday party, they were always fine, good even. But the lead up was worth just as much, probably more, you know? Glorisha was really quite normal, a very warm, sympathetic type, very serious, all business, very cut and dry, but then things like your moon is in a square aspect to your Mercury, so these next few weeks don't drive at night would fall out of her mouth, and I'd remember that this was not a visit to the dentist. And then at one point she gave me a message from John. Forgive me. That's what he said to me. Please forgive me. At least that's what she said, he said. I didn't know what to believe. But just in case, I told her to tell him I forgave him a long time ago. I didn't know he knew that I knew. I know you knew. Some people say we don't have any control, really, and then random events that it's really our reactions to them that we can control, not the events themselves, except obviously the ones we clearly choose, like saying buying a car, or going to the doctor, or getting married, or choosing a friend, or, I can't really say whether I believe on psychics. I'm agnostic. And anyways, what I really think is that people who are psychics, what we call psychic powers, it's really just a very, very fine-tuned intuition and a great deal of empathy and compassion and wisdom. Maybe that's what therapy is too. I wouldn't know. I've never had to go to therapy. And the thing about her is that if she is a charlatan, she doesn't know it. If it's all a bunch of bunkum, she's been hoodwinked into devoting her entire life to this because she absolutely believes she is doing something real and valuable and rare and necessary. She was very serious about the whole thing. But keep in mind, Glorisha's not a psychic. She's very clear about that. She doesn't predict the future per se. She's an analyst, an astrological analyst, semi-predictive. She lets you know your native conditions, how the universe is impacting you since birth, who you want in your life, who you don't, and when's a good time to start a business or have a baby or sell your house or engage in risky behavior. Thank you so much.
I happen to, have a lot of friends in New York. Thank you. I love you too. And Detroit. Detail from poem after Betty Saar's The Liberation of Aunt Jemima. And out of her gushing head I witnessed 4 fully grown women spring forth like winged beasts. The first woman wore the charm of her unmasked hair and a taken for granted beauty that made her all the more enticing. The last woman modeled an anonymous version of herself, an I that didn't remind anyone of anyone else, but who reminded Aunt Jemima of freedom. The second woman brandished a handheld mirror she spat on, then polished with the ruffled hem of her apron, a mirror all the women except the last gathered around like campfire. And the second to last woman carried a pink mulatto squirming on her hip, in the baby's hand a rattle, and the rattle a shattered light bulb, in the filament a portrait of the child's father, who some say Aunt Jemima tempted with her bottle-shipped hips, but who was known to be monstrous, a so-called god. And I beheld a sea of blood oozing from Aunt Jemima's neck, dark as syrup, and 4 women flying without shoes or wings from her maternal amber body. Lotioning my mother's back. Because she lives alone and my hands reach where hers can't, she asks of me this favor. It is narrow and soft, my mother's back. When I massage in small circles, my mother circles her own mother, who is made of whatever makes a shadow thin and ungraspable. She wants to touch her. The bones under my mother's skin, rib cage, scapula, spine, feel like sharp winter rain. Between the clouds, I see a patch of sky, glimpse my aging body, moles like a flicker of paint, undersides of half-covered breasts, patches of eczema my fingers soothe with heavy cream. Is this what a laying on of hands means? Once my mother touched a garment and said, full of an awe, full of sadness, she touched this. Her skin was inside of this. My mother's back shines like the hands I wipe on the towel's face. Weren't miracles always beginning this way? On seeing and being seen. I don't like being photographed. When we kissed at a wedding, the night grew long and luminous. You unhooked my bra. A photograph passes for proof, Sontag says, that a given thing has happened. Or you leaned back to watch as I eased the straps from my shoulders, hooks and eyes. Right now, my breasts are too tender to be touched. Their breasts were horrifying, Elizabeth Bishop writes. Tell her someone wanted to touch them. I am touching the photograph of my last seduction. It is as slick as a magazine page, as dark as a street darkened by rain. When I want to remember something beautiful, instead of taking a photograph, I close my eyes. I watched as you covered my nipple with your mouth. Desire made you beautiful. I closed my eyes. Tonight, I am alone in my tenderness. There is nothing in my hand except a certain grasping. In my mind's eye, I am stroking your hair with damp fingertips. This is exactly how it happened. On the lit-up hotel bed, I remember thinking, my body is a lens I can look through with my mind. Thank you.
Here's my wine. Marcia Douglas is the author of Marvelous Equations of the Dread, a novel in bass rhythm. Among other works, including a poetry collection, Electricity Comes to Cocoa Bottom. Her fiction, essays, and interviews have appeared in the New York Review of Books, Bomb Magazine, and elsewhere. Sadiq Fafana his debut novel, Stories from Our Tenants Downstairs, was published by Scribner in 2022. He was a Center for Fiction Emerging Writer Fellow, and his work has appeared in Swanee Review. He lives with his wife and son in New York City, where he is a public school teacher. Caribbean Fregosa was raised in South El Monte, California, the daughter of Mexican immigrant parents. She's the founder of South El Monte Arts Posse, an interdisciplinary arts organization, and Vicious Ladies, a website publishing queer and non-binary critics of color. She co-edits UC Press's California Cultural Journal, Boom, California. Fregosa's writing has appeared in Bomb and elsewhere. She lives in San Gabriel Valley, California. Arkukio Johnson is a cartoonist and illustrator born in Maui, Hawaii. His graphic novella, No One Else, won the 2022 LA Times Book Prize. His drawings regularly appear on the cover of The New Yorker. Johnson divides his time drawing in Brooklyn, teaching at the Rhode Island School of Design, and living with his family in Hawaii. Marcia?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Um, so, I'm reading from The Marvelous Equations of the Dread. And in the beginning of the novel, I pay recognition to the first people of Jamaica, the Taino. And I call this section Remix. Zamaka, 1494. Taino woman studies the future. A woman stands and looks out to sea. There are 3 ships on the horizon. They do not surprise her. She has seen them in dreams many times before. The white man on deck with his big feet and long boots, his hair the color of stringy papaya. He thinks he has come to take her Zamaka, this land of wood and sweet river water. But this island is stubborn and will not be moved. The woman has already seen this end from the beginning. Far, far in the distance, past the ships and memories of ships, she sees figures dancing on the water to the music of a man uprising on the waves, revolution on his cheekbones, fantastic dreadfulness in his hair, a lion roaring on his finger. Listen, children, to what he cries. I'm just sampling some snippets. So, moving on further in the novel, Bob Marley and Rastafari aside, some of the themes of the book, this book is also a call to nurture our youth and bring them to voice. I'm calling this section, We Jaja Children. For we are the madman children. Who knows how many of us there is? But if each of us shines 7 children's shoes, and each of those children shines 7 more, soon we will have a whole army. And if each of us sings 7 songs, and each of those 7 songs reverb in the 4 directions of the 4 faces of halfway tree, we will have a whole choir. The arithmetic does multiply that way. Turn and take a partner, tra-la-la-la-la. And if each of us tells 7 stories, and each of those 7 stories fly, tearing full speed off the pages of our spiral books, the sky over Kingston will resound with such a twittering, even the Prime Minister, no, even Mr. Barack Obama self, with his good all lined up in a row teeth, will have to listen, tra-la, so help us, Jah. And finally, I close with the youth rising up, and I'm using a Yoruba word here, ashe, the power to make things happen. The Youth, Black Star Remix. But look here, an army of youth coming from the 4 directions and into the square. They come in hundreds, pour out from the seams of the island and down into Kingston, from Porus through Maypen, from Morant Bay through Bull Bay, from Onoto Bay down Junction, from Buff Bay through Newcastle, from Trenchtown and Rima and Waterhouse and Jonestown, with drum and guitar, bass and amp, bongo and trombone, DJ and war maracas. They move decided as creatures in migration, answering a remembrance from the future. Their voices in full anticipation, they hum a bass so deep the island shudders. Mem, remembering, word resting for 300 years on the tip of the tongue. Ash, ash, ashe, 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 ashe. Jaja youth, remember them I and I. They call gully water passage, routes without precinct, bloodways, jaways, higher ground crossings, wake up teachment, risen dread mighty, sound bomb nation, bones eye rising, the new word written on the inside of a shoe. Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train. People get ready, Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train. Ashe, 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 Ashe. Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train. People get ready, Zion Mine Train, Zion Mine Train. Listen now, listen. They are calling your name.
Man, I love literature. It's great. It's great. Sadiq, thank you for coming to hear us. Thank you to the Whiting Foundation for giving us what I would describe as a Cinderella experience. Past couple of days have been just really, really great. Thank you to Center for Fiction. Always feels like a homecoming here. So, I'm glad to be here. And shout out to you in the audience. Without giving any names, there's some heavy hitters in here. So those cheers mean a lot. I'm just gonna read the intro to Stories from the Tenants Downstairs. Follows 8 residents in a fictional building in Harlem, and each of those residents tells their story. And I'm gonna read for the intro that kind of sets everything up. It goes like this. Brown brothers, sisters, moms, brown peers lived in the building with their neighbors downstairs, trying to stay alive, make all their stars align. Scant money in the wall, the rent on my mind. Nose above the tide, trying to stay afloat. On the edge, but I hope I won't fold. Instead, be like a pill about to crumble, but stay concrete. While a man is on my shoulder, all I want is peace. Yo, my skin's getting scaly. Boss trying to rail me, gotta go to work daily, saying feet don't yet fail me. Friendships, relationships, 99 attacks on my character. Bills in them black. You see my hurt grin. You see my makeup. You see the stuff for my job. You see the rainbow pop up in my scars. Everybody got a story. Everybody got a tale. Question is it despair or prevail? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. There are no words that I can give to describe this experience of being up here. And it's my first time here, the Center for Fiction. And it feels like home, and it feels wonderful to have a home shared through books and through writing with all of you here today. And thank you to the Whiting. Thank you to my family that came all the way from LA. Thanks to the homies that came all the way from LA to be here today. I'm going to read an excerpt, just a small portion of a short story. It's called Ini Ifati, and just to say a few words for context, it's the story of a friendship between 2 girls, one living, a living child, and one child martyr who is not alive and has not been alive for several hundred years. And they strike up a friendship. And the part that I'm going to read to you is from Ini's perspective. And Ini, short for Inocencia, she's the child martyr who died several hundred years ago. It had been a very long time since Ini had gone out of her way to befriend another girl, let alone a living one. Many years ago, she had heard of another child martyr who'd been preserved to near perfection and was now a very popular attraction in the big city's cathedral. She'd gone there herself one day just to see what all the excitement was about, and for other reasons. It had taken her many, many years to finally get around to making the annoying trek to the city from her hometown. She'd traveled across the Sierra, down the grasslands that fed into the patchy suburbs skirting the old metropolis. The city had changed much since the first time she'd visited, back when she was still alive, a little girl clinging to her father's sleeve as they moved through the crowded rush of people. How vulnerable she'd been, so much that she'd cling to the man who would hurt her and end her life. But now she made her way alone and unafraid through the cobblestone streets, guided by the familiar old buildings that now crumbled in the quaking thrust of modernity. The cathedral had been easier to find back then, as it towered well above any other building and imposed itself on the land and everyone on it far and wide. Small people who lived as if to bow before its absolute, macabre authority. Now it seemed to Eni the cathedral stood almost lost among the high-rise buildings, corporate offices, glittering glass surfaces. And yet, its gravity could still be felt as it continued to draw streams of believers. Eni walked past the beggars and the sick, the disfigured and the dismembered, as they moaned their pleas, the same timeless songs of the disconsolate. This would never change, she knew. The most wretched things never do. And so long as this suffering continued to exist, so would she, patroness of the miserable. She existed because of them and for them, and of course, because of her own suffering. She'd come to realize this little by little over the centuries. Eni followed the line of the devout that shuffled along, resigned to their weight. She walked past them to the long glass box on its altar, flanked by flowers and fruits, letters, drawings garlanded by rosaries. She saw that the girl lay dressed in a white communion dress. Paper thin, her skin had begun to crack. Her nostrils were plugged with small, bunched up scraps of gauze, as it was said that blood sometimes seeped from the orifices. Her worshippers would weep aloud and sing songs at the sight of the blood. Eni envied the girl for still having a body, even a decaying one. At least it was her own. Most of all, she envied the devotion showered upon her inert body by the believers. Eni's body had been bludgeoned irreparably, and not enough had remained for pilgrims to gather around. Instead, a large doll had been made in her likeness, or that's what they claimed. But Eni knew it was way off, and not by accident, not just in small details. She was not blonde in life, nor did she have glossy, curly locks. Her face was neither smooth nor fair. She'd been pockmarked and scratched, the color of clay, and she certainly did not have blue eyes, not even close. She remembers how dark they were, two small polished stones. She remembers thinking her eyes could protect her, like amulets, or like two tiny weapons she could throw at someone and draw blood, at least a little. Now she was a ceramic doll wearing a wig made of another child's hair. Her clothes were crafted from fine fabric, carefully stitched and embroidered satin, blue to match her new eyes. Eni studied the girl in the glass box for signs of life, but the girl lay unresponsive and unstained by blood, looking like a lousy papier-mâché job. If she were strung up and beaten like a piñata, she'd be the disappointing kind, Eni thought. She reread the plaque at the base of the altar for details about the nature of the girl's death and found nothing but generic information about, quote, being murdered by her own father. She scoffed. What virgin saint wasn't murdered by her own father? Eni was unimpressed, impatient as ever. She hadn't really come here for stains or miracles. She came here to talk. Well, I'm here, she said to the girl, but the girl remained silent, frozen in her death box. Can't you see? I'm like you. I came all the way here to visit you. Still the girl did not speak. It was then that Eni understood. There was nothing and no one else to talk to about their purpose, about who they were, about their girl lives cut too short. She had found only silence, and in it, she was just another story of death and decay. And now that she had time, all of eternity from the looks of it, there was no one but herself to consult in her solitude. She saw nothing in the other virgins, saints, and martyrs she'd visited, no sign of God to be found. And so she resorted to what she did have. She became a student of mortals, in whom she attempted to see her own reflection. Her pilgrims became her endless, fractured mirror. It was the best she could do. And now, in this place so far from home, she became a student of Fatima. Unexpectedly, she saw a version of herself in Fati that was so clear, it was as if she were watching herself, alive in this time. How strange that people and circumstances could remain so much the same after all the years that had passed. And because of it, as she watched Fati wander across the street from her home to the vacant lot and then bound over the broken, unwanted land as if she were a deer released into a meadow, Ini felt a great swelling desire to protect her. As their days of play continued, this need to shield Fati from a looming fate sharpened fiercely with her impetuous child's love, as deep as it was mercurial. Thank you.
Check, check. If you join the Center of Fiction, you get your own cubby up here. It's really recommend it. Let's see. There we go. All right. So I'm super humbled to be the first graphic novelist, a winner for the Writing Award. The great Canadian cartoonist Chester Brown says that the things he loves about comics are the silence and the stillness, which make for awesome readings. So I'm not. This is not so much a reading as a spirited adaptation for live performance here. So I will be adding some sound effects and other things that are not in the text. This is just an excerpt from my novella, No One Else. Shh. Okay, other foot. Dad, your foot. Up, up. Yikes, we'll do those toenails next. Sorry. Again. Next time, disciplinary measures will be taken. It won't happen again, sir. I should have my car back tomorrow, so I won't be relying on anyone else to get me here on time. Oh, I hate his guts. Hey, if my car's not ready tonight, can I hitch a ride tomorrow? Sure. Thanks, Charlene. It means a lot. Don't mention it. Shh. Ready? No one else. There's more. There's more. Dingle, dingle, dingle. Munch, munch. Munch, munch. Munch, munch. Munch, munch. Munch, munch. Munch. Oh. It's the circle of life and the world unwinding. It's is a circle, circle of life. Oops. Mom. Yes? Munch, munch, munch. Grandpa wants to go into the bathroom, but he can't open the door. Open the door for him. Munch, munch. I can't. Why not? Munch, munch. I'm busy. Just open the door. It's not hard. Ugh. Go ahead, Grandpa. Go. Come on, Batman. I opened the door, but he won't go in. Brandon, you're filthy. Wipe, wipe. Not on the floor. Go outside. There better not be a single speck on the carpet. But go. Take your lunch with you. Come back when you're ready to help. Damn it. I'll be right up, Dad. Thud. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Linda Kinsler. Linda is a contributing writer for Jewish Currents and The Economist's 1843 magazine and the deputy editor of The Dial. Her writing has been cited by the International Court of Justice and has inspired documentaries. Kinsler's work has appeared in the New York Times, Washington Post, The Atlantic, Wired, and more. Come to This Court and Cry, How the Holocaust Ends is her first book. Stefania Taladrid, yes, is a contributing writer at The New Yorker, where she covers Latino communities across the United States. She has also reported and produced American Scar, a short documentary on the environmental implications of the border wall, which received a special mention from the jury at the film festival DOC NYC. Stefania received the American Society of Magazine Editors' Next Award for outstanding achievement by journalists under 30. Emma Whipperman is the author of Joan of Arkansas, forthcoming from Ugly Duckling Press, and Pleasure as a Series of Objects. Other work can be found in Jubilat, Omniverse, Second Factory, Oversound, and elsewhere. She lives in New York City. Okay, Linda, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's an incredible honor to be around so many incredible writers working in so many amazing genres. I'm having a kind of weird day. I woke up this morning and found out that a good friend of mine, Evan Gershkovich, who's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, has been detained in Russia. So I've spent a lot of time today trying to figure out how we can get him out. I'm going to read a short excerpt from my book that's titled Agent Stories. So it's for Evan. In the 1990s, a particular genre of rumor began to spread in Riga. This was the agent story, a kind of story that sought to ferret out those who had collaborated with the Soviet organs, to name names, to bring them to account. The Soviet Union officially collapsed in December 1991, 6 months after I was born. I never have to wonder how many years it has been since this monumental event. I am exactly as old as the Soviet Union is dead. For those who lived through it, its demise was unimaginable yet anticipated, and inexplicable yet hyper-explained. Everyone had a theory. Everyone wanted to claim authority over the fickle hand of fate. It wasn't just the nation of the USSR that had vanished. It was also the Soviet conception of history and time, of achievement, happiness, success, and selfhood. The immediate post-Soviet environment was one in which there was a surfeit of descriptions and diagnoses of social change. There were numerous, equally comprehensive and plausible, yet apparently mutually exclusive conceptions of the same events, according to the anthropologist Caroline Humphrey. This diagnostic oversaturation, together with the collapse of the Cold War certainties, she writes, led to the emergence of a certain kind of paranoia, a suspicion of everyone and everything, a belief that nothing is done by chance, that the whole truth can be rooted out, discovered, and possessed. For the first time, it was possible for individuals to look inside the archives of the KGB and its predecessors and partners. Lists of former collaborators began to circulate, and neighbors began swapping stories about what they discovered. Powerful myths about the nature of collaboration began to emerge, that only those who were morally deficient, who can now be blamed, collaborated, that everyone had a secret file, that justice amounts to assigning blame, that agents had committed more wicked transgressions than party officials, and that informants were victims themselves. There was a furied interest in identifying the agents of the former regime, and for good reason. Latvia, like other newly independent nations, wanted a clean start. Latvians wanted to celebrate their own heroes for the first time in over 70 years and to punish their former oppressors. The trouble was that these categories were hardly clear-cut. As Václav Havel put it, the fundamental lines of conflict run right through each person. These lines were thick, tangled, and knotted. They would not be easily unraveled. But the rumors had long been swirling. The collapse just meant that, all of a sudden, there was some hope that the truth would come to light. The suspicion was always there. Nobody ever believed anybody during Soviet times, my mother tells me, when I ask her about this era. Yes, it is true that almost everyone had a file. Yes, the agents were everywhere. Yes, the informants were victims themselves. I can tell you all this. She doesn't like my academic approach to understanding the conditions of her own life. She doesn't like being made to feel a specimen. The truth is that she had always lived among rumors. They were a fact of life. She breathed them in along with Riga's salty sea air. She hadn't known that she was Jewish until one day someone called her an Evreika, a Jew, in the courtyard, and she went upstairs to ask her parents what that meant. The family religion was communism. The rest she would have to intuit. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be reading a story from the October 17th issue from last year in the New Yorker. This is a particularly important issue for me. The cover of the magazine was dedicated to the children of Uvalde, and that is a story that I regretfully had to cover too. The story is titled The Abortion Underground, and it was one of a series of pieces that I did on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. The handoff was planned for late afternoon on a weekday at an underused trailhead in a Texas park. The young woman carrying the pills, whom I'll call Anna, arrived in advance of the designated time, as was her habit, to throw off anyone who might try to use her license plates to trace her identity. She felt slightly absurd in her disguise: sun hat, oversized glasses, plain black mask. But the pills in her pocket were used to induce abortions, and in Texas, her home state, their distribution now required such subterfuge, along with burner phones and the encrypted messaging app Signal. Since late June, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Texas and 13 other states had effectively banned abortion, and more were sure to follow. In some of the states, laws that originated as far back as the 19th century had been restored. Providing the tools for an abortion in Texas had become a felony that could lead to years in prison, and a fellow citizen could sue Anna and collect upward of $10,000 for every abortion she was found to abet. Anna wasn't a faint-hearted woman. Someone who had recently approached her for pills noted her cottagecore vibes and steely calm. But she wasn't reckless either. She and other women defying abortion bans had turned to a model developed by Veronica Cruz, a prominent Mexican activist. Until last year, abortion was considered a crime in most of Mexico, the second biggest Catholic country in the world, and women there had become adept at providing safe abortions in secrecy. Given the legal exposure, pseudonyms have been used for Anna and other American women who let me into their underground networks. By the time the pregnant woman for whom Anna was waiting walked up, the trailhead was quiet enough to make the chirping of birds seem jarring. As Anna pulled a plastic bag of pills from her pocket and settled across from the pregnant woman at a picnic table, she registered the fear on the woman's face. Her distress, as Anna understood it, was less about a breach of Texas law than about the possibility that her husband, who was violent, might find out what she was doing. Hands shaking, the woman told Anna that she was already raising 3 children and had been trying to save enough money to remove them from a dangerous home. The prospect of having another child, she said, was like getting a death sentence. She couldn't vanish from her household for a day without explanation, travel to a state where abortion is legal, and pay $700 to a doctor for a prescription. Anna's pills, which were free, were her best option. Taking the baggie and some instructions on how to take the medication, the woman thanked Anna and fled the park, hoping that her husband would never realize she'd been gone. Section break. The town of San Miguel de Allende in central Mexico is known as the birthplace of legendary independence leaders. It is just as famous for its charm: cobblestone streets, Baroque churches, bright houses, and lively cantinas once frequented by Mexican muralists and beat poets. Some Americans visit for a week and decide to stay. Among those expats is Liz, a retired Southern woman in her 70s. On the morning of June 24th, as she was making coffee in a kitchen where photographs of her great-grandchildren covered the fridge, she heard on the radio that the constitutional right to abortion in the United States had ended. She maneuvered her walker to a nearby chair and sank down. She felt as she had as a child, in a house by the sea where she'd once lived, when a hurricane she'd been dreading made landfall. It was awful, yes, but knowing what was coming had given her a chance to gather her courage and make a plan. 5 years earlier, Liz had met Veronica Cruz, who runs a nonprofit called Las Libres, the Free Ones, out of the city of Guanajuato, some 50 miles west of San Miguel. At the time, Cruz was defying Mexican law by helping women, mostly poor women, abort at home, in part because activists like Cruz successfully reduced the stigma of abortion. The Supreme Court of Mexico had decriminalized abortion in September of 2021. That same month, Texas moved in the opposite direction. A state law known as SB 8 banned nearly all abortions past the 6th week. Since then, Cruz had widened her remit, supplying free abortion pills to undocumented women in Texas. Liz figured that with Roe overturned and states from Arkansas to South Dakota implementing abortion restrictions, the demand for Mexican abortion pills would soar. If she lacked Cruz's decades of experience working on the cusp between the lawful and the criminal, she was neither too old nor too diminished to take a risk. She picked up the phone to call Cruz and then some friends to find out which of them would be game to join an underground network.
Hi, and thank you. It's really, I feel like I knew this was a big deal, and then hearing all of you read is really, I don't know, it feels a lot different now. Hey Mom, can you check my coat pockets to see if there's 2 more pages in there? if not, we're fine. We're all staying in this hotel, and I printed, there's no, okay, so it goes. So I'll be reading a very brief excerpt from my book, Joan of Arkansas, which is, I have more time to explain it now, it's fine, but it's, yeah, it's about a kid named Joan and a cast of characters, and it moves between poetry and play script, and I'm just going to read these 2 pages. It starts with a cast of characters, and that was more relevant earlier, and then the prelude. The first character is Joan, who's an awkward teen, but adamantine with grace, takes selfies to self-abnegate, and really needs to feel God's hot gaze. The mom of Joan, a devoted Arkansas State Park Ranger. The followers, not a chorus, but the comment section. The place is Domremy, Arkansas, and the increasing heat of the USA. The time is the future or now, election season, but with a medieval logic like in the 100 Years' War. The prelude. Alone in the dark, dark except for the white light of a phone, illuminating the face of Joan in the foreground. The followers hum a single note, a note that gets higher with each new click, each like a lick. With each new follow, the note gets higher and hotter and more. More followers join as the hum becomes viral, a fever, then whine, a shriek suddenly low, a single long choral moan until quiet. Joan says, "O great cloud of witnesses, heaven or internet, it's hard to be good." All the lights go off. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Center for Fiction for hosting this excellent event. Clap. Please stay for drinks and snacks, and don't forget to buy all the books, you know? And yes, that's it. All right, great.